ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतपादकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सगगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सगगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितंश्च। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्त राधा कान्त नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा। Welcome to our weekly study of Bhagavad Gita. So we are continuing from second chapter entitled as Sankhya Yoga. Prabhupada translate that title of the second chapter as Contents of Gita Summarized. So this particular chapter, right, is considered to be, this essence or the entire Gita summary is entire Gita in a summary format. It is spoken. So if you understood the second chapter, you can understand the gist of the second chapter. So I'm just sharing the structure, the breakdown of the second chapter. This second chapter, right, contains 5 sections. Section 1 is verse 2.1 to 2.10, Arjuna's further doubts and surrendering to Krishna. And then second section is verse 2.11 to 2.30, which gives Atma Jnana, knowledge of the self. And Krishna is encouraging Arjuna to do his duty of fighting because we are all eternal souls. So Arjuna's compassion for his relatives are based on body, right, which is misplaced. So the compassion should be there for the soul. The soul is never created, never destroyed, it does not take birth, it does not die. The soul is eternal. Only the body is coming and going. So do not actually misplace your compassion towards the body, ignoring the soul. So that's what Krishna gives in this second section, 2.11 to 2.30, Atma Jnana. The analytical study of both matter and spirit, Krishna gives. He clearly establishes that we are all eternal spirit souls. The third section, 2.11 to 2.38, Krishna gives Karma Kanda. Just do your duty for the sake of attaining higher goals. By just fighting in this war, either you win or lose, still you will attain, it will be beneficial for you. Even if you do not consider about the material benefit, the spiritual benefits, even if you are not considering anything connected to spirituality, if you simply do your duty as a Kshatriya, fight in this war, if you get killed in this war, you will go to higher planets and enjoy. But if you win the war, then you will get to enjoy the kingdom here. So even based on the Vedic scriptures, the Karmakanda section prescribes everybody to encourages everybody to do your duty. By not doing your duty, you will incur sinful reaction. So the next section 4, 2.39 to 53, Buddhi Yoga. Krishna, whatever he spoke in the previous section, Karma Kanda, actually is Krishna is going to tell, or we started seeing these verses, that men of small knowledge get attracted towards the flowery words of Vedas. Vedas are pretty much dealing with material modes. All the various sacrifices, everything which is prescribed in the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas are only for enjoyment in this world, which is temporary, right? We should try to rise above that. That is what he is going to say. You got to engage in yoga. What is that yoga? Buddhi yoga. By doing your prescribed duty, karma, if you do it in connection to God, if you do your duty in connection to God, that becomes yoga, karma yoga. If you do our prescribed duty in relationship with God, so that karma becomes karma yoga. Yoga is the process which links our consciousness to God's consciousness. The activity might be same, the prescribed duty might be same, but if the consciousness of the performer of the duty, if is properly situated, right? If it is properly situated, then that karma becomes karma yoga. The only difference is consciousness of the performer. If the performer does his prescribed duty as a grahastha, as a vanaprastha, as a sannyasi, as a brahmachari, or as a brahmana, kshatriya, vaishya, or shudra, whoever it might be, if they do their prescribed duty according to their social position, according to the stage in their life, if they do the duty in connection to God, if they keep their consciousness properly situated, that becomes yoga. And again, this karma yoga is performed at two levels: sakama karma yoga and nishkama karma yoga. Sakama karma yoga means, sakama means with desires. A person who is doing his duty as a service to God, but still he might have desires to enjoy the fruits of the work, fruits of the duty. If somebody does like that, then that becomes sakama karma yoga. A person who have more knowledge, he realizes that if I'm attached to the fruits of the work, it invariably implicates me in the cycle of birth and death. It creates me, the good and bad reactions of the work I'm doing. Because of me being attached to the fruits, I have to face the consequence. If he realizes that, then he develops detachment from the fruits of the work. If he does that, then that is called nishkama karma yoga. Nishkama means without desires. Without desire to enjoy the fruits of the work. So a person who is situated in knowledge, he does his prescribed duty, but he is not attached to the results. But when I'm doing my duty, the results will come. What should I do? I should give up the results. I should give up the results for different causes, for the benefit of others, I might do. So when he further, when he keep on doing it, at some point of time, he might realize that I'm doing all this work, all the fruits are coming, I'm just giving away all the fruits. Who is the beneficiary of all the fruits of the work I'm doing? When he realizes that, right, the fruits of the work I'm doing, who is the beneficiary? When he starts seeking that question, he graduates to Jnana Yoga. When he starts searching for who is the ultimate beneficiary of the work I'm doing, who is the ultimate beneficiary of this thing, who is the ultimate source of everything, then when he starts searching for the ultimate beneficiary, then he graduates into Jnana Yoga. Then he seeks for this soul and super soul. he comes to the spiritual platform by rejecting everything material. Not this. This is not soul. This is not super soul. Like that, he keeps on rejecting. Not this. Not this. Na iti. Na iti. Neti. Neti. He keeps on rejecting all the material things. Then at some point of time, I realizes that nothing in this world, everything I see in this world is all matter. If I have to see the spirit, I need to have the proper vision. For that, I need to control my mind. When he realizes that, he graduates to Dhyana Yoga. In Dhyana Yoga, there are 8 stages, Ashtanga Yoga. Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana and Samadhi. When he continues to do his Ashtanga Yoga by controlling his mind through the mechanical process, when he finally comes to the stage of Samadhi, he sees Paramatma in the heart. When he sees Paramatma in the heart, he is properly guided and situated. He surrenders to Paramatma and start rendering loving devotional service unto the Supreme Lord. At that time, he graduates to Bhakti Yoga. When he comes to Bhakti Yoga, then he sees everything is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Everything belongs to him. Everything has to be utilized in the service of the Supreme Lord. When somebody has this knowledge, even though he might be doing his duty, the fruits, everything, he will be engaging in service of the Supreme Lord. So when he does that, that is also Nishkama Karma Yoga, but that Nishkama Karma Yoga is Bhakti Yoga. So that is the perfection of the Nishkama Karma Yoga. As I mentioned, the Nishkama Karma Yoga contains 2 stages, Sakama and Nishkama. And Nishkama again has 2 levels. One is just simply giving away the results without knowing who is the ultimate beneficiary. But by searching for the knowledge, by understanding who is the ultimate beneficiary, who is the supreme source of everything, supreme controller of everything, supreme proprietor of everything, and supreme enjoyer of everything. When he understands that Supreme Lord is the supreme source, controller, proprietor, and enjoyer, he offers all the fruits of his work in the service of the Supreme Lord. When he does that, that Nishkama Karma Yoga is the perfection. And that Nishkama Karma Yoga is non-different than Bhakti Yoga or Buddhi Yoga. Right? So that's what Krishna is telling here, the Buddhi Yoga. So last week and the week before, from verses 2.39 to 2.45 or 44 we covered. So we are going to see verses 2.45 onwards. So you can see the screen, my browser.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So I will just read the translation for the sake of continuity of the last verse, what we covered last week, and then we will start reading the verses. In the minds of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence, and who are bewildered by such things, the resolute determination for a devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place. So now we are going to read 2.45. Krishna is going to continue to speak about Vedas. 2.45. Traigunya Vishaya Veda Nistraigunya Bhavarjuna Nirdvanto Nitya Sattvasto Niryoga Kshema Atmavan. Traigunya, pertaining to the 3 modes of material nature, Vishayaha, and the subject matter, Vedaha, Vedic literatures, Nistraigunya, transcendental to 3 modes of material nature, Bhava, be, Arjuna, O Arjuna. Nirdvantaha, without duality, Nitya Sattvastaha, in pure state of spiritual existence, Niryoga Kshemaha, free from ideas of gain and protection, Atmavan, established in the self. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The Vedas deal mainly with subject of the 3 modes of material nature. O Arjuna, become transcendental to the 3 modes to these three modes. Be free from all dualities and from all anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self. Purport. All material activities involve actions and reactions in the three modes of material nature. They are meant for fruitive results, which cause bondage in the material world. The Vedas deal mostly with fruitive activities to gradually elevate the general public from the field of sense gratification to a position on the transcendental plane. Arjuna, as a student and friend of Lord Krishna, is advised to raise himself to the transcendental position of Vedanta philosophy, where in the beginning there is Brahma Jignasa, or questions on the supreme transcendence. All the living entities who are in the material world are struggling very hard for existence. For them, the Lord, after creation of the material world, gave the Vedic wisdom advising how to live and get rid of material entanglement. When the activities for sense gratification, namely the Karma Kanda chapter, are finished, then the chance for spiritual realization is offered in the form of the Upanishads, which are part of the different Vedas, as Bhagavad Gita is a part of the fifth Veda, namely Mahabharata. The Upanishads mark the beginning of transcendental life. As I mentioned before, the four books of Vedic knowledge, Rig, Yajur, Sama, and Atharva Vedas, contains four categories of knowledge. They are called Samhitas, Brahmanas, Aranyakas, and Upanishads. Samhitas means prayers to different personalities. Brahmanas tells you how to conduct various rituals by offering those prayers to different personalities. And then Aranyaka explains the esoterical meaning of all these rituals and prayers. And Upanishads, the concluding portion of the Vedas, which are also known as Vedanta, Upanishads gives the philosophical conclusion of all this knowledge. So hence, Upanishads are considered to be Vedanta. These four books of Vedas contains many subdivisions. Those subdivisions are called sakas. There are totally 1180 sakas are there. So Rig Veda contains many subdivisions. Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, and other Veda, they all contains many subdivisions. So there are totally 1180 samhitas are there. Corresponding to each one of the samhitas, there will be a corresponding Brahmana. There will be 1180 Brahmanas will be there. Corresponding to every Brahmana, there will be a Aranyaka will be there. So there is totally 1180 Aranyakas are there. And corresponding to every one of the Samhita, Brahmana, and Aranyaka, there will be a Upanishad. So totally there were originally 1180 Upanishads were there. Now all these various divisions of Vedas were all taught to different sects or groups, disciples, starting from Vedavyas. The subdivisions were recited by different disciples groups. Over the period of time, these Vedas all got lost. Out of this different divisions of sakas of the Vedas, not even today a 5% or 10% of Samhitas is left, and not even few Aranyakas and Brahmanas are left. In terms of Upanishads, out of this 1180 Upanishads, totally there are 108 are considered to be very important Upanishads, or principal Upanishads. The list of this 108 is given in one of the Upanishads. Of this, around 10 or 11 are considered to be very important. So this Upanishads gives the concluding portion of the knowledge. So this is what the four Vedas are giving. And there is also a fifth Veda. The Puranas and Itihasas are considered to be the fifth Veda. especially Mahabharata, is considered to be the fifth Veda. Because the same teaching is what is given in the four Vedas are also given in Mahabharata in a more accessible way. Because the Vedic knowledge, to study the Vedic knowledge, one has to be a Dvija. Dvija means twice born. He has to be initiated by proper reformation and proper rituals one has to go through so that one can be purified sufficiently to understand this knowledge. So they are called Brahmana, Kshatriya and Vaishya. It is not based on birth, as I mentioned before. When somebody goes through the proper samskaras, he can come to the level of Dvija. When somebody is situated in the Dvija level, the Guru sees the inclination of the disciple. If he has more Brahmanical qualities, he will teach more of the Brahmanical knowledge. If somebody has more Kshatriya tendencies, he will teach more Kshatriya knowledge. If somebody has, Vaishya tendency, he will teach accordingly the Vaishya knowledge. So all three categories are qualified to study the Vedas. But in order to practice the Vedas and conduct the sacrifice, so one has to come to the level of a Brahmana. As I said, Brahmana means not born in a particular, community, or, it's not based on birth. It's one's guna and karma determines the varna. If he's properly studied all the Vedic literature, if he's an expert in conducting all this, understanding all the Vedas and conducting these sacrifices, he's called a Vipra, an expert Brahmana. When he continues in that path, when he comes to level of inquiring about the transcendental nature, Brahman, Brahma Janati iti Brahmanaha, one who constantly inquires about Brahman is called a Brahmana. So Brahmana is a very advanced stage who is not interested in anymore conducting, sacrifices and whatnot. He is interested in understanding the spiritual nature, transcendental subject, right? When he comes to that level, then only is called a Brahmana. So these four varnas, when they do their duty according to their, their qualities and according to their nature, when they perform the duty, when the duty is done in connection to Krishna, in connection to the Supreme Lord, that becomes Karma Yoga. When they see that all the results has to be used for the service of the Supreme Lord, then it comes to Bhakti Yoga. Here, this Upanishads, to study this Upanishads, again, as I said, these four stages of life: a Brahmana, a Brahmachari, a Grihastha, a Vanaprastha, and Sannyasi. Predominantly, when somebody is in the Brahmachari stage, even though he studies all the Vedas, predominantly his focus is memorizing all the Samhitas. When he comes to level of a Grihastha, when he graduates from the school and then enters into the married life, then he is qualified to perform different yagyas, right? In order to perform the yagyas and various sacrifices, he need to know the Brahmanas. He practices the Brahmana knowledge. As I said, the person, who is practicing, conducting these rituals also called Brahmana. The portion of the scriptures which teaches these rituals is also called Brahmana. Now, in the next stage of life, after family life, when it comes to retired life, that stage is called Vanaprastha. The third stage of life, he actually generally, in the ancient time, he actually goes into the forest. That's why it's called Vanaprastha, one who dwells in the forest. So in the Vanaprastha stage, he studies Aranyaka. Aranya also means forest. When which is studied in seclusion in the forest is called Aranyaka. Aranyaka gives the esoteric meaning of all the worships and rituals. So when he develops sufficient detachment, he gives up everything and walks away from all the things which is connected to his body. Then he comes to the fourth stage of life, is called sannyasa. Sannyasa stage, one is qualified to study the Upanishads, contemplate on the concluding portion of the Vedic knowledge. When somebody does not have any material attachment anymore, one who works only for the benefit of the entire world, he does not limit himself to an individual family. He considers the entire world as his own family. Sannyasa means it is not that one becomes hard-hearted, one does not have compassion for others. When somebody is in a Grihastha stage, he predominantly his focus is on his family. When he goes through sufficient detachment in Vanaprastha stage, when he gives up completely, when he comes to the Sannyasa stage, he accepts the entire family, entire world as his family, and actually works for the welfare of the entire world. He has compassion for the whole world. Then he is a sannyasi. The sannyasa stage, when he doesn't have any specific material attachment, sees everybody as a spirit soul, then he is qualified to understand the concluding portion of the Vedic knowledge, which are Upanishads. So this is how traditionally it's studied in different stages of life, the different parts of the Vedas. When it comes to the level of Upanishads, you can understand. Again, the absolute truth is understood at the three levels: Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Gradually, one can come up to the level of understanding Brahman. And above that is Paramatma, then above that is Bhagavan. So this is how one attains perfection in the spiritual life. Now, for this to do, one has to be a Brahmana and a sannyasi. To study all this Upanishads, one has to be well versed in the Sanskrit, different aspect of the Upavedas, Vedangas, right? Vedangas means the limbs of the Vedas. One has to be master in the 6 limbs of the Vedas. They are called Chandas, Nirukti, right? Vyakarana, like that. There are 6 divisions are there. And Jyotisha, all the 6 divisions one has to be familiar. To study the grammar alone, it might take 12 years of life. After understanding the 6 divisions of this Vedanga, the limbs of the Vedas, one who is properly qualified to study the Vedas and practice the Vedas. Otherwise, we will not be able to understand. So now, as I said, this requires, one has to be in a very, very elevated and purified stage. Now, what about others? They cannot get the same benefits. So for those people who cannot come up to this level of a Brahmana sannyasi, the same teaching is given in a more accessible way. In the 5th Veda, the Puranas and Idihasas. Puranas and Idihasas non-different from the Vedas. Only the method of teaching varies. In the Vedas, the teachings are at very abstract level. Whereas in the Puranas and Idihasas, which is considered Panchama Veda, the 5th Veda, the teachings are based on examples. The methodology of teaching, the mode of teaching is easier to accept people from other stages of life. So that is why Vedavyas compiled the Puranas and Idihasas himself. After dividing all the Vedas, he also compiled the Puranas and Idihasas. Mahabharata is considered to be the 5th Veda. In the 5th Veda, the same concluding portion of the Vedic knowledge, which are called Upanishads, is there in the Mahabharata, that is Bhagavad Gita. So that's what Prabhupada in this purport is telling here. When the activities for sense gratification, namely Karma Kanda chapter, are finished, then chants for spiritual elevation in the form of the Upanishads, which are part of different Vedas, the 4 divisions of the Vedas. And as the Bhagavad Gita is a part of the 5th Veda, namely Mahabharata, the Upanishads marks the beginning of transcendental life. The same Upanishadic knowledge is there in this Upanishad called Gita Upanishad, which is part of Mahabharata, which is accessible to people from all walks of life. So the same Vedic knowledge Krishna reveals here in Bhagavad Gita, the concluding portions of the Vedas. As long as the material body exists, there are actions and reactions in the material modes. One has to learn tolerance in the face of dualities such as happiness and distress or cold and warmth, and by tolerating such dualities, become free from anxieties regarding gain and loss. This transcendental position is achieved in full Krishna consciousness when one is fully dependent on the goodwill of Krishna. So here, the Buddhi Yoga, in the beginning stage, if he does not know who is the ultimate beneficiary of all the things in this world, if he doesn't know who is the ultimate beneficiary, then it is very hard to practice the tolerance from the dualities of this world. Happiness and distress, cold and warmth, right? Anxiety regarding gain and loss, they are all very difficult. When somebody understands the Supreme Lord is the supreme source of everything, supreme creator of everything, supreme proprietor, controller, and enjoyer of everything, he does not have any more anxiety. So that's why Prabhupada is telling this transcendental position is easily achieved in full Krishna consciousness when is fully dependent on the goodwill of Krishna. When he understands that supreme personality of Godhead is the supreme absolute truth. Everything belongs to him. Hence, if everything is engaged in his service, there is no more anxiety for gain or loss, right? So that's why Prabhupada is saying it is easy to achieve. The next verse, 46. Yavanartha udapane sarvata sampluto dake tavan sarveshu vedeshu brahmanasya vijanataha. Yavan, all that arthaha is meant udapane, in a well of water, sarvataha, in all respects. Sampluta udake, in a great reservoir of water. Tavan, similarly, sarveshu, in all Vedeshu, Vedic literatures, Brahmanasya, of the man who knows the Supreme Brahman, Vijnanataha, who is in complete knowledge. Translation. All purposes served by a small well can at once be served by a great reservoir of water. Similarly, all the purposes of the Vedas can be served to one who knows the purpose behind them. Purport. The rituals and sacrifices mentioned in the Karma Kanda division of the Vedic literature are meant to encourage gradual development of self-realization. And the purpose of self-realization is clearly stated in the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Sarvasya chagam hridishan nivishto mata smritir jnanam apohanam cha vedaisa sarvair agam veve vedyo vedanta kritveta videva chagam. This is 15.15. I just recited. I'm just going to that verse. So Krishna is telling, I am seated in everyone's heart. From me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. Here, if you say, Vedaisya charvair aham veva vedyo. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. So that's what Prabhupada is quoting here. The purpose of studying the Vedas is to know Lord Krishna, the primeval cause of everything. So, self-realization means understanding Krishna and one's eternal relationship with him. The relationship of the living entities with Krishna is also mentioned in the 15th chapter, 7th verse. The living entities are part and parcels of Krishna. Jiva Bhuta Sanatanaha. Right? Mamai Vamso Jiva Loke, Jiva Bhuta Sanatanaha. Manashashtani Indriyani, Prakritishtani Karshati. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with six senses, which include the mind. So we are all originally part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. The purpose of the part is to serve the whole. We had forgotten our constitutional position, hence we are all struggling in this material world with our senses, the six senses, the five Jnanendriyas and the sixth coordinating sense, the mind. With the six senses, we are all struggling in this world because we are all disconnected from the Supreme Lord. The living entities are part and parcel of Krishna. Therefore, revival of Krishna consciousness by the individual living entity is the highest perfectional stage of Vedic knowledge. This is confirmed in the Srimad Bhagavatam as follows. Aho batasva pacho the gariyan yach jivagre vartate nama tubhyam te pustapaste juhuva shashnur arya brahmanachur nama granati yete. O my Lord, a person who is chanting your holy name Although born of a low family, like that of a Chandala, dog eater, he is situated in the highest platform of self-realization. Such a person must have performed all kinds of penances and sacrifices according to Vedic rituals and studied the Vedic literatures many, many times after taking his bath in all the holy places of pilgrimage. Such a person is considered to be the best of the Aryan family. See, here we can understand how one's birth does not matter. If one understands, one could be born in the lowest of the low family from in terms of social situation. Here it's mentioned that one could be born in a Chandala family. Chandala means dog eaters. They are not even within the four varnas. They are outcast. They are outside of the four varnas. Even though one might be situated outside of the four varnas, if he understands the essence is to chant the holy name, if he chants the holy name, right, actually he is situated in the highest platform of self-realization. That means he is above the three modes. He is above these four varnas, right? Shudra, right? Vaishya, Kshatriya, and Brahmana, the gradual elevation in the consciousness level. It is not an artificially created imposition to exploit the people in the world. One has to understand when the Veda says the Brahmanas are the highest, and then Kshatriyas comes next, Vaishyas comes next, and then Shudras comes next. When it does say, it is in the level of consciousness. Because of their consciousness is more materially contaminated, their attachment to the material thing is higher. They will not be able to understand the higher purpose of life. That is why when it says higher and lower, it is not that Shudras are not important to the society. They have to do as mentioned, scriptures mentions. Right? The Vishnu Purana says that the different limbs of the Supreme Lord are these four varnas. Right? The head is considered to be, Varanas are considered to be the head, and the Kshatriyas are considered to be the arms, and the Vaishyas are considered to be the belly, the Shudras are considered to be the legs. If we consider the society, the head of the society is the Brahmana, the arms of the society is a Kshatriya for protection. The economic development, the Vaishyas are considered to be the stomach, which nourishment gives the nourishment. And then Shudras are considered to be the legs, which does the work, the labor. It is not that in a body, leg is not important, only head is important. No, all the parts are required for the body to function properly. Similarly, all four of them are required for the society to perform. Only in the level of consciousness, they act differently. So that's why the higher and lower comes only in the level of consciousness. So here it is mentioned, if somebody, even though be born in a dog eater's family, if he understood the essence is to chant the holy names of the Lord, if he is chanting the holy names of the Lord, he is situated on the highest platform of self-realization. Such a person must have performed all kinds of penances and sacrifices according to the Vedic rituals and studied the Vedic literature many, many times after taking bath in all the holy places of pilgrimage. Such a person is considered to be the best of Aryan family. So this is the verdict of Srimad Bhagavatam. So there is no discrimination from the social position at all. Vedic culture gives equal opportunity for everybody according to the level of consciousness. How, if somebody wants to become a doctor, everybody has equal opportunity. But one who clears the entrance exam for the medical colleges, he only can enter into medical college. There is a qualification to enter into a medical college. One cannot say, why I did not get opportunity to study in medical college. If you are qualified, you can also enter into medical college. It's based on qualification. Like that, one's level in consciousness determines one's varna, one's activity and quality determines the Varna. Even though socially one might be born in a lowest family, even outside of these four Varnas, an outcast, Chandala, but if he is chanting the holy names, the Bhagavatam glorifies that personality. He might have done all the sacrifices in the past life. He is higher than all the four Varnas. So this is the purpose behind the Vedas. Purpose behind the Vedas is to know its purpose. What is that purpose? Vedaisha Sharvair Agam Veva Vedyo. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. As Krishna tells in the 15th chapter, this is the purpose of the Vedas. The purpose of the Vedas is to know its purpose. Here, the analogy given, all the purposes served by a small well can be solved or done by a great reservoir like a lake. Similarly, even though one has to study all the Vedas, if he knows the purport behind, the import behind all the Vedic knowledge, if he understands, actually he knows everything. That is what Prabhupada is quoting for that verse, this Bhagavatam. So one must be intelligent enough to understand the purpose of the Vedas without being attached to the rituals only, and must not desire to be elevated to the heavenly kingdoms for a better quality of sense gratification. It is not possible for the common man in this age to follow all the rules and regulations of Vedic rituals, nor is it possible to study all the Vedanta and the Upanishads thoroughly. It requires much time, energy, knowledge, and resources to execute the purpose of the Vedas. This is hardly possible in this age. The best purpose of Vedic culture is served, however, by chanting the holy name of the Lord, as recommended by Lord Chaitanya, the deliverer of all fallen souls. When Lord Chaitanya was asked by a great Vedic scholar, Prakashananda Saraswati, why he, the Lord, was chanting the holy name of the Lord like a sentimentalist instead of studying the Vedanta philosophy, the Lord replied that his spiritual master had found him to be a great fool and thus asked him to chant the holy name of Lord Krishna. He did so and became ecstatic like a madman. In this age of Kali, most of the population is foolish and not adequately educated to understand the Vedanta philosophy. The best purpose of the Vedanta philosophy is served by inoffensively chanting the holy name of the Lord. Vedanta is the last word in Vedic wisdom, and the author and knower of the Vedanta philosophy is Lord Krishna, and the highest Vedantist is the great soul who takes pleasure in chanting the holy name of the Lord. That is the ultimate purpose of all Vedic mysticism. So, as I said, one has to be in a highest qualified stage to understand the teachings of Upanishad. One has to be a Brahmana sannyasi. One has to be in the level of consciousness, one has to be a Brahmana. In terms of detachment, he has to be a sannyasi. In that level only one can understand the Vedanta knowledge. So that is very hard in this age of Kali. Hence, Lord Krishna appeared as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. By his own example, he taught how to become a perfect Vedantist. See, when the Prakashananda Saraswati, when Lord Chaitanya went to Varanasi, Varanasi was filled with all these great sannyasis who were studying all Vedanta philosophy. Lord Chaitanya was also sannyasi. He had already taken sannyas, but he was actually chanting and dancing the holy names of the Lord in the streets of Varanasi. The head of all the sannyasis who are studying all this, Vedanta philosophy, Prakashananda Saraswati, he approached the Lord and he asked the Lord, why are you chanting like a sentimentalist the names of the Lord? Higher than this is chanting studying the Upanishads. As a sannyasi, you should be studying the Upanishads. At that time, Lord Chaitanya mentioned that my spiritual master, told me, because I'm a fool, I should not study the Vedanta, I should just simply chant. in a form of humility, he mentioned like this. See, he is the Supreme Lord himself. He is the compiler of the Vedas. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, I am the compiler of the Vedas. I am the knower of all the Vedas. All the purpose of Vedas is to know me. Vedesha charve raghame vivedyo Vedanta kritveda videva chakam. But in term, out of humility, he said, I am just a fool. My spiritual master asked me to just chant. By chanting, he was actually getting that spiritual relationship. Even though he knows the entire Vedas, even though later he defeated all these sannyasis with Vedanta philosophy, but out of humility, he was telling, by his own example, he was teaching the essence of all the Vedas is to chant the holy name. So that is the highest Vedantist. So we will cover one more verse, and then probably after that, any question is there, we can stop. Karmanyava adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phale heturbur ma te sangu stva akarmani. Karmani. In the prescribed duties, eva certainly adhikaraha, right, te of you, ma never phaleshu in the fruits kadachana. At any time, ma never karma phala. Karma phala in the result of the work, hetuhu, cause, buhu, become, ma, never, te, of you, sangaha, attachment, astu, there should be akarmani, in not doing prescribed duties. Translation, you have right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. Never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities and never be attached to not doing your duty. So when people in general, when you ask them, when you tell them about Bhagavad Gita, oh, I know about Bhagavad Gita. And then immediately they quote this verse, Karmanyava adhikaraste, do your duty. That's what Bhagavad Gita says. Actually, they do not quote the second part of this sloka. Only they quote the one quarter of the sloka. Karmanyava adhikaraste. You have right to do the duty. Hence, do your duty. That's what Bhagavad Gita says. No, that is not complete. Here, Krishna is telling, Ma phaleshu kadachana, right? You have the right to perform the duty. You are not entitled to the fruits of the action. And never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities and never be attached to not doing your duty. This is the proper understanding of the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita proposes this Nishkama Karma Yoga, which is the Buddhi Yoga or Bhakti Yoga. Right? So, there are three considerations here: prescribed duties, capricious work, and inaction. Prescribed duties are activities enjoined in terms of one's acquired modes of material nature. Based on one's varna and ashrama, different duty is described. Capricious work means actions without the sanction of the authority, and inaction means not performing one's prescribed duties. The Lord advised that Arjuna not be inactive, but that he perform his prescribed duty without being attached to the result. One who is attached to the result of his work is also the cause of the action. Thus, he is the enjoyer or sufferer of the result of such actions. As far as prescribed duties are concerned, they can be fitted into three subdivisions, namely routine work, emergency work, and desired activities. Routine work performed as an obligation in terms of the scriptural injunctions without desire for the results is action and the mode of goodness. Work with the results become the cause of bondage. Therefore, such work is not auspicious. Everyone has his proprietary right in regard to the prescribed duties, but should act without attachment to the result. Such disinterested obligatory duties doubtlessly lead one to the path of liberation. Arjuna was therefore advised by the Lord to fight as a matter of duty without attachment to the result. His non-participation in the battle is another side of attachment. Such attachment never leads one to the path of salvation. Any attachment, positive or negative, is the cause of bondage. Inaction is sinful. Therefore, fighting as a matter of duty was the only auspicious path of salvation for Arjuna. As we saw before, Gita was not spoken to a sannyasi. It is spoken to a Kshatriya, a Grahastha king, who is very much had family duties, very much had his prescribed duties as a Kshatriya. So hence Gita was spoken to help us to understand this knowledge is applicable for all. It is not only applicable for a sannyasi, it is applicable for people in all walks of life. So everybody has the obligation to perform the prescribed duty according to the mode of nature one acquires. As a Brahmana, Kshatriya or Vaishya, according to stage in life, they are situated as a Brahmachari, Grahastha, Vanaprastha or Sannyasi. Everybody should do their prescribed duty, but they should not be attached. If they perform the duty in that way, they can progress in the path of salvation. That is the path was prescribed for Arjuna. And that is the path is prescribed to all of us. Whether we are a family man, whether we are a grahastha or a corporate man, whether we are a mendicant, whether we are a woman, children, whatever it might be, our social and, life situation might be. It is applicable to all here, the teachings of Gita. That is the unique position of Bhagavad Gita. The Gita knowledge is not just meant for certain population, a Brahmana sannyasi. No, Upanishads are meant for like that, a small group, because it requires so much of austerity and elevation in consciousness to understand this abstract teaching. Whereas Gita gives the same knowledge with equal opportunity for people in all walks of life. The only thing required to understand Gita knowledge is one should be in the mood of an Arjuna. One should be non-envious like Arjuna towards Krishna. One should understand that, right, I am in this world, conditioned in this world. I am not able to understand what my prescribed duty is, how to come out of this perplexity of this world. I have to take shelter of the Supreme Lord. He understood, he surrenders to Krishna. Hence, he was able to hear Bhagavad Gita and he understood. Krishna revealed the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita and he understood. It doesn't matter what our social position might be. As long as we have the same mood of Arjuna, if you tune our mindset to Arjuna's mindset to receive this knowledge, we can understand this knowledge and realize this knowledge. That is the beauty of Bhagavad Gita. So we stop here at this time. Any comments? Any questions?
No, thanks. I don't have any questions today. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Anybody else has any comments, any questions? So as I said, this second chapter gives the summary of the Gita, So what all these verses means, when we study from third chapter onwards, Arjuna is going to ask more clarification in the application of this knowledge. So that when we study the rest of the chapters, everything will fall in place again. So if not, we'll stop here. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for joining our session this week. So we'll continue next week from verse 48 onwards.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.